today. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining today's class. Today we'll learn a lot about OpenAPI Specification, how to create, how to edit, how to convert your Postman collection to an OpenAPI Spec file, and also how to edit also edit and create the API doc from Postman, then convert the collection to an OpenAPI Spec file and see it working. So we'll have our awesome speaker, Mr. Prince Oyanona. So he'll be the one to take us on this class. So I would like everyone to pay attention because your next assignment depends on this, and not just your next assignment, like I said earlier on. Also your career depends on this, because a lot of companies, like I said earlier, don't want to move from one platform to the other while you're creating and creating. For example, you use the README editor to design and create the API docs, and later something comes up, I guys want to change the platform to Mintify. Mintify also has the editor. You have to now create with Mintify from scratch, wasting a lot of time and resources. But with what you're going to learn from Mr. Prince today is you're going to create a file called OpenAPI Specification, which is a standard file understood by a lot of API docs platform that will be used just is like create one and use everywhere. What I mean is, if you create the OpenAPI file, you can use on README, just upload it or import it on README. Automatically, your docs is live. You start testing and using it. Then, if you want, okay, I want to move from README to Netlify, you just download or copy the file, get there, you upload it, and same thing, you don't need to create anything, it's just upload and it's up, and you start using it. So same with so many other platforms. So that is what we're going to learn from Mr. Prince today. So thank you, guys. Mr. Prince, you have the mic.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. For those that are in Nigeria, and for those that are seeing this elsewhere, hello. Thank you very much, Sir Wisdom. You already defined OpenAPI spec, so I don't think I'll waste more time there. If you are expecting a lot of slides, I don't think you're going to get that today because it's very practical. So what we're going to do is really run through the slides, right? So there's going to be a guide, and yeah, so let's go. So this is what we're going to cover today, right? I'm going to explain the entire workflow of how working with API spec files usually work, right? Then we're going to go through step by step each of the steps in the workflow. So starting from when you get your API from your developers, from your Postman collection, then you convert your Postman collection to an OpenAPI spec file, then you edit the spec file, right? And then you deploy the spec file to any of the platforms, say README, Redocly, or Mintify. And then I'll give you a few tips on stuff I've gotten from working with OpenAPI spec files, and I believe that will help you. Also, again, if I talk too fast, please find a way and let me know, right? Okay, so let's go. For the purpose of those that don't know me, my name is Prince Onyanuna. Also, thank you, Sir Wisdom, for pronouncing my name properly. A lot of people don't do that. So my name is Prince Onyanuna. I am a cloud native technical writer and a co-lead for the Tech Writing Ministry program. In case I sound kind of funny, it's because I've been working on something on Kubernetes and it's been annoying. So for those of you thinking of doing anything relating to cloud, Kubernetes is not your friend. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is what exactly happens when you're working with an OpenAPI spec file. I hope we get what an OpenAPI spec file is as I was defined, right? For if you didn't catch it, it's a standard for creating or defining your APIs, right? What I mean standard is it's accepted by all API platforms. So you just define your API in this file, and then you can replicate it wherever you want on any platform, right? You don't have to deploy or work on different platforms. So it's platform agnostic, if you get what I mean. So what really happens when you're supposed to work on an OpenAPI spec file? So this is what happens, right? The developers or the team, they send you the endpoints, right? When they finished building it, they send it to you most times or usually in Postman. and you're giving access to this, and your main or the first thing you're supposed to do is test. And you're testing for two reasons. The first reason, you're testing to make sure that it actually works, the endpoints actually work. And the second reason you're testing is because you need to save or store the responses, either the errors you're getting or the success messages you're getting. And this is going to be important for your OpenAPI spec file, right? So when you're done testing and you're sure that everything works, then you export your collection, right? And you convert it to an OpenAPI spec file. Usually you're supposed to write this from scratch, but if you have your collection on Postman, better for you. So you just convert it and you're good to go. Then you have your OpenAPI spec file, but it's rough. There are some things that need descriptions, there's some things that need proper definitions, and that's where you start editing the OpenAPI spec file to make sure it all fits. And when you're done, you deploy it. Sounds easy, right? Okay, so let's go. I have I'm done. I'm mostly done with the slides for now. So let's go straight into it. So a few years back, last year, right? It's been a while. Last year, I worked on this endpoint as an assignment from my mentor. That was them, right? So, okay, do I have a hands up? Should I check that? Okay, that's not for me. All right, so I worked on this endpoint, and we're going to use this as a sample for this entire class. So this endpoint or this API is for the movie database. If you've heard of it, that's fine. So take, for example, we have the find by ID endpoint, and we're supposed to run a test to make sure everything is working, right? And when you run this test, this is the response you get, right? I'm not sure I have access to this because it's been a while, but on a usual basis, when you get your endpoint, this is how it's going to look, all in the folder. And all you have to do is run the test. I'm sure by your examples and by the assignments we gave you, you're able to run test and know how test works in Postman, right? So when you're done testing, you usually save your responses with this button right here. So this response we have right here is going to be saved somewhere here, right? Now, when you're converting this exact thing, you're going to have all this saved for you. So it's very important that whatever response you save after running your endpoint, you save it right here. I hope that's clear. So take, for example, all these endpoints all have example 200 responses. So that's good to go. Now, we're assuming that we're done testing, right? Okay, we're assuming we're done testing. I hope you can see clearly. Those that can't, you're going to export.
You can see it.
Okay, sure, thank you. So you're going to export this collection and it's going to get downloaded for you. So let's open this up. Right, and we have that saved. Now I'm going to introduce you to two tools. Now the first tool I'm going to introduce you to is the tool we built for the community, right? The community, or Sawisam and I, we came together and built a Postman to API, Open API converter, right? Now it's still in its first stages and we still need contributors to it. So it may not be able to handle complex cases when it comes to converting, right? So I'm going to show you the second tool, but we need contributors. So if you're eager and willing to contribute to this project, I will drop the link for you to view it on GitHub and make your contributions as well. So
It's used with which
remember,
language, please?
this is built with Sawism. I did the documentation for this project. I think we use React, right? If I'm not mistaken, this is built with React, yes.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So we have our Postman collection ready. So I will share the link to both of this on the chat. And the moment you paste your Postman collection, you get the output here, right? And so you copy it. Now, This editor you're looking at right here is called a Swagger editor. It allows you to edit your OpenAPI spec files and get active responses by the side. So if you didn't get what happened here, this entire screen here contains the Postman collection, and this entire screen here contains the OpenAPI spec. Are we good?
Please come again, Prince.
Okay. I pasted the Postman collection on the left. This is the Postman collection, right? This Postman collection we exported, right? This is it right here. And this here is your OpenAPI spec. So you can see Postman collection in JSON, OpenAPI spec. Okay? It has done
Please,
the
how were you
conversion
able
for
to
you.
export it?
Okay, I'll go again. Pay attention. This is your entire collection right here.
Mm-hmm.
So you click on this button, you scroll down, and you see the button export. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So you click on export and you export. Simple. It will download the file for you and you just open it and copy it. Is that cool?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. So you paste it here, you paste your collection in JSON right here, and it's going to do the converting for you. So paste it here, does the converting for you automatically. All right. So you copy this.
Mm-hmm.
Now that is exactly what I pasted on the Swagger editor. Before I go far, I will drop the links to all this. Now I'll drop the link to this. So you can find it on the chat. Check it out. And this is the link to the Swagger editor as
You're
well.
getting
I will guess so. Because the man dey talk.
I think someone is unmuted. Messi, I think you have to mute your mic. All right, thank you. Okay, so we're done with this.
And please, it would be nice if you also post it to the Discord, our Discord groups, please.
All right, Josh, thank you. I'll do that. I'll do just that. So back to the class. Now, this is your entire OpenAPI spec file. This is it right here. So that tool really helped you and saved you a lot of time by helping you convert from Postman directly to OpenAPI spec. However, this is not entirely complete, right? Take note, I documented this with Postman. Therefore, you're going to see a lot of handwritten stuff. So when you're documenting with another platform, right? Okay, let me make this clear. I used Postman for documenting and not for testing. That is why you see all these text here. On a usual basis, you won't find all this here. All you see is the heading and you start seeing endpoints because what you're going to be getting is directly from the developers. Are we clear? So I did this for documenting, and that's why you're seeing this first text here. I hope that's clear. Now, the reason why I said you have to edit this file is because there are a lot of things that need descriptions. Descriptions need to come in for your requests and descriptions need to come in for your responses. And half of the time, you're not going to get descriptions for this. I'll show you. You see this movie results here? Usually you need a description for this, you need a description for this, for this, for this. And all these fall under your responses, okay? And you're going to add descriptions for each and every one of them. However, if I try to or attempt to do that right now, you might get confused. So what we're going to do is we're going to build all this from the beginning. However, we're going to do it with just one endpoint, okay? So I'm going to take all this away. So let's start from scratch. Okay. So this is the first part of your OpenAPI spec file, and I'll take it step by step. So I hope you have your note or pen to take things down or just pay attention or be careful. And don't mind the errors here, right? The errors are just going to be there until we fix it and everything comes into place. Okay. So the first line, which is usually apparent to your entire or any OpenAPI spec file, is the version, which is the version of OpenAPI spec you're using, which is 3.0.3, right? Now, the info block right here contains information about the API. This is like metadata about the API. This includes the title, and mind you, you can change this to anything you want, right? And you can see the results right here. Now, this is the description, short description. Remember, when I documented it myself, it was very long, but this is a shorter version, right? So this is a short description of what's going on with this API. This is a version of the API you're using. And this contact is left for you to include information about the API maintainers. So right now it's empty, but you can also have it looking something like this. This. So notice we didn't have this here before. This gives you a link to a website you can go to reach out to the support team and gives you the email. And this is it right here. Email, URL. Please don't get lost. If I'm going too fast, let me know. Are we there? Can someone say yes? Can I get a feedback?
Oh my, you go far.
Why are you there? Is there anything? Should I slow down a bit? Should I go back to something?
Like, I'm trying to, I don't even know. Like, I'm trying to understand the whole thing that is going on here because
All
I'm
right.
seeing email URL, but it's showing something else. Like, send emails
Exactly.
to. So, where
Okay.
is this
This
coming
part
from?
here was edited directly by this is a Swagger thing or an OpenAPI thing, right? I didn't do this. All you have to specify is the URL and the email. And it should just tell you, okay, it's in the name right here. TMDB support team, TMDB support team. And this leads to their website. So this link right here this link is specified here, right? Let's attempt to click it. Okay, it's leading you to their mail. We don't need this. I hope you can see my screen. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, good. So don't save. Okay. And this is leading you to their website, and this is leading you to their email. Right? So you don't have to specify anything, just add the information. And this is optional, but it's necessary if the developer or anybody using your API needs information to contact the API maintainers, this is where you include the information in contact. Okay? Is that clear? I don't like the awful silence. That's all I say
Yes,
something.
yes, yes, yes.
All right, let's go. Okay, so this for the most part is just beginner information. Now you have servers. Now servers is your base URL. If you've been documenting with README, you should know what the base URL is. This is where you're sending your endpoints. This is where you're sending your request to the base URL, right? And the base URL can get as simple as this or can get as complex as this. So let's say you can have a description that says base URL, right? And you can see its output here. You can have multiple URLs, something like this. Told you about the errors. Okay, so you can have multiple URLs where you can drop down. So this you can have for testing, this you can have for production. You can have a whole lot of URLs, right? And descriptions for each of them. So this is just for you to specify your base URL. Okay, for this part, is anybody lost? Is there anything difficult you don't understand? Because it's gonna get tricky. So I want to hold your hand. If you're fine, let me know you're fine. Anyone? Are we lost?
So I want to ask, is this
Mhm.
open API spec? Does it deal with structure, like
Yes,
arrangement
it's
of?
tightly. Yes, this your OpenAPI spec can be built in JSON and in YAML. But what you're looking at now is in YAML, right? YAML format. Okay, exactly. So whatever mistake you're making, it's based on your structure. So anything you don't put well is going to break. Okay, so say I did this. Now we have an error right there. Okay, so you're going to be very careful with the structure. The good news is when you convert directly from Postman to OpenAPI, it gives you in a good structure, right? All you have to do is maintain it and make sure it doesn't break. And please try and use a system that's fast. If you use Windows, you might suffer because if you have an error, because I use my system is quite fast, right? I'm saying this out of experience. If you use a system that's slow, when you actually rectify an error, it takes a bit of time before it reflects. But the change with this one is kind of instant. So this is personal experience. No. Okay. So we've added a lot, but we'll hold your hand through it. So if I don't have any question, I think I'm free to move forward. So right here, we just have only one endpoint, which is this guy, and I'll break down what's happening here. Now, this path section is where you explicitly include all your endpoints. Now, this is where the main thing happens. Okay, so this is your first endpoint here. And if you had several, after you had this, below this, you have another one, and another one, another one. Take note of the formatting. Each of the endpoints will fall under the path section. Okay, or the path object, let me call it that. Okay, yeah. So when you define the path object, the first thing you're going to define is your endpoint, which is this part right here. Under your endpoints, the first thing you're defining is what HTTP method that endpoint is, right? In OpenAPI Spec, you can call this the endpoint, or you can call it an operation. So this entire thing right here is called an operation from /3/find/ open braces external ID. It's called an operation. Okay. So this entire operation here is a get operation. You can have posts and the color changes. You can have delete. You can have put. Okay. But this is a get. This is get. Now, after you've defined your HTTP method, the next thing you're defining or the next thing you're adding is a tag. Now, tags allow you to place your endpoints or your operation under certain sections. Now, let's close this for a bit so I don't go too far. So, below your file right here, you have a tags object. Yeah. And this tags object allows you to have various tags. Now, the first tag we have here is find. However, you can have multiple tags, say something like this. You can have the movies tag, you can have a TV shows tag, and this is how you see it. Movies, TV shows. When you're defining your operations, you can now decide to say, all right, I need this find endpoint to be under the movies tag. And right here, it has moved from find to movies. Is that clear? You can also put it in both places. You can have it in find and you can have it in movies as well. Okay. So tag allows you to group certain endpoints under certain categories. And this will also reflect in your documentation as well. So the tag for this operation is find. A summary gives you a brief description of what your endpoint is doing, which is find by ID. And a description gives you a better explanation of what your endpoint is doing. Now, if you remember what I talked about in our last class, when we talked about when we're discussing README, this description right here is this same thing that shows up. This endpoint initiates blah blah blah. This is where you have it right here. And when you open your page, when you're documenting your API, when you open your page, you're going to have find by ID as a brief summary of these endpoints. So summary and description are very important. Okay, so take note of that. Now you have your operation ID, and your operation ID is an identifier of the particular operation you're working with. And it's very important to have this, right? Because it helps developers in looking for, searching for this endpoint in their code, right? So it's very important and take note that you cannot have this operation ID in multiple places. So it can only be once. It's unique. Okay, good. So all this part here, I hope it's clear. This is basic for every single endpoint you're gonna have or you're gonna have. Yeah, I don't like the silence, but I'll keep moving. Now, this is the GET request. You have the options of query parameters and path parameters. Okay, now in this case, we have both, but we only have one documented here because the external ID is clearly a path parameter, and the next parameter is the query parameter, which is the errors external sources. Sorry. Now, when this is displayed on the screen, this is what it looks like right here. So we start from the beginning. You define the name of the parameter, which is external underscore source, which is this. You describe where it's gonna be, which is the in. And for this, you can either have header, paths, as you can see here. You can have header, paths, query, cookie. Okay. So we can change this to something like header. Okay, change this to paths. But this will cause an error, right? Because you're supposed to have it as part of the endpoint. It is a path parameter. Now, schema. Schema allows you to define how an example or how an object is supposed to be structured. Okay, so the type of this parameter is a string. An example of this parameter is Facebook underscore ID. And this you can change to anything. Okay, you can change to Instagram, and it's going to show Instagram here. If you will, take note of every single thing we're changing here, because when we convert this back to README, you're going to see all these changes on README as well. Now, for the external ID, this on its own is going to show you required because it's compulsory because you're already part of this endpoint here. So it's showing or explicitly required. And you can also show or specify if you need this to be required. So if you were talking about the external source being required, all you have to do is required true. Okay, for those of you that have written a bit of code before, it should not be so difficult for you to get a hang of. Okay. Now, when you define your schema, you define the type of parameter this is, which is a string. It can be a string, it can be an integer, it can be a boolean. And then you've given an example, which is going to show in this box here. However, you don't only have, okay, let's say you had a post HTTP method. In that case, you're not dealing with parameters this way. You're going to have what we call request bodies. Okay, so it's going to be something like this. Now this is going to show an error because this is a GET request. But let's say we change this to a POST request. Now we're fine. So this is what your request body looks like. And I'm showing this because we only have one endpoint. We're trying to show examples. So this is what your request body looks like. And then you have, under your request body, you have two examples, right? You have one for the valid movie request, and you have another one for another movie request. And once you once you change them, the values here keep changing. Remember that these examples are important because when the user is trying to try it out, either here or on README or Makeify, this is exactly what they would need, the information they will just use place this and get going. Okay, so it's very important you have this. So if you're using a post or have a post or put HTTP method or operation, this is how you structure it, because those ones require request bodies. I hope that's clear. So that's for parameters and examples. So it's very useful or very important that you actually have examples. Now, if you wanted to change this value and you didn't want this external ID to be shown here, you will just have to explicitly document this external ID, and it will look something like this. 1 second.
No, can't hear you.
Okay, how about now? Are we good? Can you hear me? All right, sorry about that. I just sensed that you couldn't hear me. I hope we're not lost. I hope I'm not going so fast. Okay. Okay, you said the record will be of help. Yes, it will. Okay. So I was trying to show you if you wanted to explicitly document this external ID so you could change the example. So you just specify it. It's actually quite easy. You just specify external ID, specify the path, make sure it's required or it's specified true as required, and then you can say something like testing. Let's say we wanted to just say testing. And right here you have testing. Okay. So let's take that out. Now we move on to responses. Now this is where you have the bulk of work on this endpoint, because your responses is going to include the headers, which have additional information about your endpoint response, your response you get from your request. Okay, so all this part you may not bother doing anything with. This is given to you straight from when you save those responses you get from your OpenAPI, your Postman collection. This is how you have these headers right here. So it's very important you save those. Now, I'm closing that because we're not going to go through all that. The important part you need to talk about is right here, the content section. Now, this is where the main example you stored is going to be shown. So right here, this is what you have. Find by ID. Find by ID right here. I'm going to show you the output and I'm going to show you what you have here. Okay. So find by ID is the description you gave it here. You can say find by IDs. If you add an S, it should show you an S right here. Hold on, sorry. Okay. So first thing you're looking at right here is a schema. And as I defined that, a schema is a structure for the object, or a schema is a structure for an object. So this entire thing you're seeing here is the base structure for every response a user is going to get from this endpoint. Okay. So anytime a user sends a request, to this endpoint. This is the structure of the response they are getting, and that is what a schema is. Okay. Now, for every of these, for each of these right here, you need a description. Okay. See this in our movie, right? And you're going to see the description here. Okay. So these are the things you're looking out for when you're editing your OpenAPI spec file. You're looking out for descriptions for your requests. You're looking out for descriptions for your responses. Okay. So take note. So when you're done converting to OpenAPI spec file, you're checking for all the descriptions. You're checking for if your endpoints are structured or put categorically under different structure with your tags. Okay. So this is important information you should look out for. So the purpose of this, we're not going to document all this, but make sure you know adult needs a description. Backdrop path needs a description. Gender IDs need a description. Okay. Now, the actual example for this response right here is here. And this example object here follows the same schema we defined above. Okay. And each of these schema here, each of the examples in this schema, each of these all have examples. Okay. Hope that is clear, and I hope none of you are confused. If you are, just get the hang of it, and when you start playing around, you figure it out. I'm sure of that. Okay. Now, let's say we wanted to replicate this. And when I say replicate, I mean in the sense that there's another endpoint, right, that has exactly this kind of schema for the response. Having to document this schema again is going to be redundant. And now OpenAPI Spec allows you to use something called components. Okay. Now, using a component, you're going to basically not have all this here. All you're going to have is a single line. Okay, let's do it together. Let's say from properties, right? We're adding this single line here, and we're going to define the entire schema under this component section right here. Now, what did we just do? We took out the entire schema that was in this endpoint and brought it down here to the component section. And this section allows you to have reusable components, basically, right? So in case you don't want to write stuff over and over again, and it doesn't have to be responses, it can also be requests, it can also be parameters. All you have to do is define it down here. Every single thing you had there, just bring it down here and use your ref key. So this find by ID is the name you gave the schema down here. That's the only thing you're adding here. So the only thing different from what you have above there or what you had before was this line, schemas, this name, and the rest is exactly the same thing. Okay. So once you do that, if you drop this down, you're going to see the schema, the same schema I showed you here. The same schema down here, but you don't have to concern yourself with that. Okay. So in case you're thinking of using reusable components, this is how you do it. Another important thing you should look out for in your OpenAPI spec file is security. Okay, so I've talked about operations, I've talked about parameters, either you're having request bodies or parameters, how to define them. I've talked about reusable components, and now I'm talking about security. Now, security is where you define basically your API key or authentication method. Okay, and now you can have bearer tokens, API key, big auth, auth2, whatever the API demands. Okay. Now, when you convert your API from Postman to OpenAPI Spec, this is usually put in for you. However, there are two ways of defining security. You can either choose to define security individually inside every single endpoint, like this one did. So if you had another endpoint, you have this same line again, security API key. You had another endpoint, security API key. Or you can define this globally, right? So we'll take that out there. But first, notice this. When you have authentication setting for your endpoint, it shows right here with this padlock. Okay. And if you take it out, it's no longer there. Okay. So if we didn't want to define it, what did I do? Okay. I moved so fast. Okay, I've taken out my components. However, faster. So if you didn't want to define it in each individual endpoint, this is what you do. Now, this is defined globally. So for every endpoint we add, it's just automatically going to have the security set to API key. Okay. And if you're not using API key, this will be OAuth2 or whatever type of authentication you're using. I hope we're clear. I hope nobody is lost. Okay, everybody's quiet. All right. So basically, those are the things you're going to look out for, and that's how you're going to structure your endpoint. And this goes on and on for each of your endpoints you have. So you're checking for authentication. You're checking if authentication is set. You're checking for all the descriptions. So let's use this visual thing so we don't confuse anybody. So you're checking for descriptions. You're checking if most of them or whatever objects are supposed to be required are those parameters that are supposed to be required are required, and those that are not are not. Okay. So you're checking if everything is structured, all your headers are correct, and all your examples are set properly before you think of exporting and moving down to README. Okay, before we move from here, I will take questions. Are there any questions about this OpenAPI spec file? What we did, is anything you need me to come back to? Okay, Mercy.
This is a lot. So I want to ask you, please. You know you did like spot what we have in Postman, then we convert it, and then voila, everything is working fine. So me, I want to ask, are we to write all this thing by ourselves? Like sit down and write it by ourselves, or we can do that Postman conversion and all that? You people should
Yes.
stop laughing now. Yeah.
Okay, hold on. In the case that your endpoint was given to you outside of Postman, I don't know how that will happen. However, in most cases, 95% of time, you're going to be giving these endpoints in Postman because this is where developers work. This is where they test their endpoints, and you're allowed to test too. You're giving credentials, they give you ability to test, right? And I told you that it's important to test because one, you need to make sure that it's actually working, not because they tell you it's working, but you know it's working. One, and two, you need to document the endpoints. Okay, so when you're giving this on Postman, and you export and convert, you're already giving the OpenAPI spec. That is what you're giving, right? From there, all you have to do is edit the spec. If it was given outside of Postman, then I think you have to document from scratch. That is the only case I think you have to document from scratch. If there is no means of converting from that structure or whatever platform they give you to an OpenAPI spec, you have to convert, or you have to convert from that platform to Postman down to OpenAPI spec. But you get the gist. So whatever you do, make sure you just land on Postman. If it's on Postman, you're good to go. So you don't have to write from scratch. Okay, Mercy.
So in a nutshell, it's not like
Mhm.
okay, I was given an endpoint, right?
Mm.
I go to Postman. Them just give me a scenario. Of course, I was
Mhm.
given an endpoint. I decided to go to Postman, test it, check it out. And I decided to like convert it. Then maybe I think that's good now. Abi, it's not bad, right?
Mhm.
It is well, oh, but it's good, sha.
Okay. Any question? I'll take one more question. If you don't have a question, then we'll proceed. Okay. Valerie.
Yeah, thank you. My question is, after exporting our file from Postman, this place now, is it this place we'll be editing in the Swagger editor, or is there
Yes,
another
this is where
place to edit?
this is this is the preferred way to edit because you're getting this response, right? There should be other platforms. I'm not sure, but I use this personally, and I'm giving you everything from personal experience because you don't want to edit this in the dark. In the dark, in the sense that you see that every time we make an error or we do something crazy like this, our endpoint breaks, and we know that, oh, we've done something wrong. Yeah. I don't think, or maybe most platforms might not have this option for you to see exactly what's going on, you know? So it's not that this doesn't fail as well, because I've had cases where my entire OpenAPI spec is looking as good as this, and I try to move it down to README and it breaks, or Meetlify and it breaks. It fails silently, but on rare occasions. So I suggest that this is the kind of platform you should use that gives you a visual view. If you do find another platform that gives you something like this, I advise you take it as well. If this doesn't suit your case, but this is good because you get to see what's going on in real time. Okay, and this
Okay.
it mimics a bit what you're going to find when you do your conversion down to README. This is almost the same kind of thing you're going to see. README or Matrify. Okay, so I think that's good. So now, Messi, you have to hold on your question. Let's continue. Just jot it
Sorry,
down, and
please.
I'll come back to it. All right. Okay. So we're assuming we're done editing, right? We're done doing whatever editing we have to do. We've added our descriptions. We've sorted out everything we need to sort out with our OpenAPI spec. The next thing you're going to do is click on the file button. Pay attention. We're clicking on more buttons now. You click on the file button and you convert and save as JSON. Okay. Now it's going to download the file for you. I don't think you can see that part, but it's downloaded the file for me. And then you move on to the platform you're using to deploy or write your API or define your endpoints. This can be Redocly, this can be Meetlify, this can be README. In this case, we're using README. Okay, so okay. I have a project open, so let's go here. So this is my dashboard. I hope I see I have access to edit this. Let's create something new. Don't get what's going on right here. So let's create a new project. So say movie BP test. 100. Now, since you're creating a new project, you're given the option of uploading an OpenAPI spec file. So this is the file I created, so you can see that. So I'm uploading the file, right? And it says my docs is good to go. So let's go to docs. Okay, so this is the endpoint we worked on right now, right? Everything we documented there, I will break down for you right here. So find by ID. This exact thing you're seeing here is the summary we gave it right here. Okay. This description is this description right here. It's a GET request, and we know that this is a GET. This is a GET request. It's a GET request operation we worked on. This is the base URL, and this is the endpoint. Okay, base URL, this endpoint, this, and that makes up this entire URL right here. This is your external ID, which is a path parameter. This is your external source, which is a query parameter. Okay. This is the response. It was saved because we saved it on Postman collection, and it was documented still on OpenAPI Spec. So it was saved here. Usually you will find the descriptions here, but we didn't touch the descriptions for now because of our call. So these are the headers, and this is the response body. Okay. Because you set authentication, this is where you're usually supposed to put in your API key. Okay, if this was O2, OAuth2, we are talking whatever, this would look a little bit different. Okay, good. Now this is so short, so let's do this. We'll place back that file we downloaded at first. Okay, and we'll see what that looks like. So Postman collection. So this one has all the endpoints, right? So let's save, and let's go back to README. Now this is very tricky. I think README did something to their UI, so I can't find my API right here. Anybody
I
try to
think
use it?
they send a notification that you can check like both the URL like is paired together. I don't know. What?
This is actually very crazy. I don't know why they'll do this. Nope. Project settings. Change, so nope. This is wrong. Why would they do this? Now I can't upload a new API spec file. Okay. Well, I don't know how I got here, but that is exactly what I'm looking for. I hope you can see my screen.
Sometimes if you're using Chrome,
Mm-hmm.
it might add some things. So you can check other, if you have other browser, just check it out. Like Safari or something.
Okay. I think we're using this call on Chrome. So if I leave it now, you may not be able to see my screen anymore. So let's stick with this. We'll figure it out. Okay. I got there with the last one. Okay, so I think I'm here again. Okay. It wasn't so hard to find. I found it. So I'm trying to upload a new OpenAPI Spec file, the new one I downloaded now, so we can see what the entire my project I did, not the single endpoint now, the entire project, what it looks like. So if there are no errors here, we should see this. Okay. So this is uploading, but usually doesn't take a lot of time. So you can come back here and check. So according to their UI, I think this is the view and this is where you edit. Doesn't make any sense to me, but okay. So let's wait a bit. Okay. Now, remember I've uploaded two OpenAPI spec files now. So this is the first one, and this is the second one right here. So it seems like we just combined two. And the difference is showing here because if you remember clearly, in the endpoint we were trying to work on or edit, we changed the name. If the name was the same as TMDB and everything in this file was the same as this one here, it will just add it up. Okay, when you upload your OpenAPI Spec file, it will add all the endpoints together, the old one, the new one, to add it together. But if there's a difference with both files, it will separate them and segment them like this. Okay, so this is exactly what you see. This is the poorly written Postman stuff I did. So this is what it will look like. So no need for you to go and start manually writing on README, and then you can't move back to any other platform like Meetify in case you have to change. Okay. Once you upload your OpenAPI spec, all your endpoints are going to be here for you. Okay. And since all of them have your descriptions, they have your examples, they're all just going to be documented for you. Usually I should get like, oh, this is cool and all, but I think this is very confusing for most of you because it's new. However, this gets easy with time, right? And you find out that you find yourself working with this more because it will save you time on the long run. On the long run, if you're working with the team for a longer period of time, because if you have to document your endpoint in multiple places, that is you doing one thing over and over again. And it doesn't make any sense to repeat work over and over again. So all you have to do with your OpenAPI spec, as we talked about, finish your testing on Postman, then convert from Postman collection to OpenAPI spec, edit the OpenAPI spec that it fits your standard. Once you're done editing, you download the OpenAPI spec and upload it to README or whatever platform you're using, and your API is set for you. Okay, that's the entire workflow, and that's what I've tried to run through in this series. Now, I'll give you a few tips before I come back and answer questions. I'm going to call it a day. So, whatever you didn't understand, gather it right now because I'll answer your questions. Okay, so the tips I have for you. The first tip is you should always use reusable components, because one of the reasons why you're using an OpenAPI spec file in the first place is because you don't want to repeat stuff. So because you're running away from repeating stuff does not mean because you're using an OpenAPI spec file, you now have to repeat stuff. So if you find that there are some request bodies or parameters that look alike, or some responses that have the same schema, quickly just use a reusable component. And how do you do it? Remember, you use the ref keyword, and you use the schemas object down at the component section. Okay. Now, use reusable enums for fixed values. If you were here with us in our last class, I made mention of enums, right? And I showed it to you on how you can use it with README. But let's take a look and see how we can use this in, let's take a look and see how we can use this here. So say, for example, you have this guy right here. And enums is used for fixed values, okay? So when I mean fixed values, it's either this or that, okay? And you don't just want to start typing. Let's say you have a description for this. Then you start typing Facebook. Let's say this is Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Let's say this is supposed to be the fixed values for this guy right here. You don't want to start typing in the description here. I think this supposed to be, if I'm not mistaken, this makes sense. It's weird. Okay, this is not working as I expected. However, if you were gonna do this, okay. Let's try this out. Okay, this is not what I expected. However, you should not have something like this. Okay. Point is, if you needed something that describes your endpoints for you in a way that everything works correctly, you should also use something called enums. Okay. And enums allows you to, why is it breaking? Enums allows you to do something like this. In cases where you have fixed values, active, inactive, blah, blah, blah. Why is this having an error? Just have to say no. Anyways, so if you're gonna have this is how you should use enums, and it's advised that you actually do use them so you don't start typing all this out in raw text. Okay. So now I don't know why this is breaking, but we don't have time to start debugging this. So let's take that out. Okay. My last tip, all of my tips, include examples in responses. Okay. Now, when I say include examples in responses, this is what I mean. Let's close this. First of all, your schema itself should have why did that break? First of all, your schema itself should have, I don't know what happened right there, but you get that a lot when you're working with this. So the schema should have examples. Okay. So whenever you're documenting your responses, each of your schema objects should have an example. So when you're documenting the example itself, right, it all makes sense. I hope that makes, I hope that's clear. I hope that makes sense. Now, take for example, you're talking about foot average. Foot average should have an example, and the example is 0. Okay. Title should have an example. The example is Dora escaping to music. Each of them should have an example, and the response itself should have this documented. You should not have an API or an API or an endpoint or an operation without giving a response example. an example of what the user should get when they shoot a request to that response or to that endpoint. Okay, that's what I mean. And then use tags to organize your endpoints. So if you remember what I talked about tags help you structure your endpoints into different sections. So find has only this one endpoint under find. Movies has this 5, list has 2, TV series has 4, and search has 4. That's because tags were first defined here, all of them. And then for each endpoint, all you had to do was specify, okay, this belongs under movie or this belongs under search. In that case, when you switch over here, it's all grouped together. I hope that makes sense. So you don't have your endpoints all listed out weirdly. Okay, so those are the 4 tips I have for you, and I found them very useful when I was working with OpenAPI Specs, and I think that you too will find them useful as well. This was a very chaotic class. Now I'll take your questions, okay? Because this is relatively new. I'm not finished talking now. Joshua, all right, let's go.
Thank you, sir. So,
Mhm.
my own is not really a question; it's a suggestion. But I got to
Yes,
just say it right now before. Can I go ahead with that?
yes, please.
Okay. The thing is this: since we're all starting, and honestly speaking, or I got to speak for myself. I was confused all through. Why I say,
Okay,
yeah, you get, and I believe it's also the same too for most people here, at least to
okay,
an average. So I would love to say if we can also hold a class on API spec file inside the week, by then, by then we must have watched the first video, which is this video. If it's available on YouTube, we must have watched it before the next class. You get,
okay,
that's just my suggestion. Thank you so much.
okay. You're welcome. So you'll be able to digest what you've learned and come up with more questions. Okay, that's cool. We'll talk about it, and if it's something that Salvism approves, if we can find the time within the week, it may not be as comprehensive as this. It will just be maybe an info session, okay, something like that, where you come with your questions and we answer. Maybe you'll be the one sharing the screen. If you have problems, you should have problems because I'm expecting that you try this out. This is not. This is like code, right? If you have code explained to you, you may not understand it until you actually start getting your own errors. So start with your assignment you've been given. I believe that all of you have Postman collections you're working on right now. Export the collection and then convert the collection down to OpenAPI Spec. Place the collection on the Swagger editor. Try fixing a few things, putting a few descriptions here and there, trying out reusable components, enums, and all you have there. Then deploy it, right? See how it looks. Now, when you get the first feel of it to actually working, then you go back to OpenAPI Spec and try refining it, right? What can I add here? How can I structure this? One thing is writing good code. One thing is writing reusable code, right? So the first step is for you to actually write it. So start writing. That's my first advice. Do we have any other questions?
So I have a question, not to you, Prince.
Mm.
So let me start with Josh. So which aspect you don't understand? Is it everything or just the editing and adding of the responses on the OpenAPI aspect file?
Okay, it was the basically the editing and adding the responses and the description. That was it. The editing, everything was doing on the swag. So it's called swagger now. Yeah, everything was doing on
Yes,
the
Swagger.
swagger. Yeah, I was confused there, but the rest, I tend to understand it. Yeah.
All right, thank you. So is this same for everyone here, or you guys you're good to go with everything? You understand it very well. Messi, Edun, Gloria, Victoria, Olubisi.
Okay, so personally for me, I feel like once we have the recordings and then we can practice, then whatever challenges we are facing, we'll be able to drop them on Discord and then we'll get solutions.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
fair
I
enough.
also believe that once I go through, then I would any errors I
Okay,
have until I try it out, then I'll know where I have it.
okay. So just so you leave this class with something in your mind about how OpenAPI Specification works. Remember the workflow. First start with Postman. Test properly, save your responses. Okay. Then you convert or export your collection and convert it to OpenAPI Spec. Remember what we did on this call was kind of thorough because I was trying to explain each and every object inside the collection, right? So you understand what they are for and what they are doing. However, if you're doing this on your own, you will not have to do this. All you have to do is you already have the fully built OpenAPI spec, so you won't have to go into one by one. Most of the things I did, you won't even touch them. Most times you won't even touch the metadata of the API. Those will just be converted directly for you. The things you're looking out for is, first of all, you're looking out for the authentication. If the authentication is well placed, right? Leave the reusable component first. Reusable component is when you're trying to redefine the OpenAPI spec so it's lighter. It makes more sense, right? Reusable component might be difficult. Take that out of the way. So when you have your OpenAPI spec, the first thing you're looking at is you're taking the first endpoint. Then imagine you have the first endpoint. You're looking at the description. The description makes sense. Good. You move down. Is this a post or get the request will already be set for you from Postman? So if you documented well or if they tested well for you on Postman, you don't have anything to do with HTTP methods. Those ones are going to go well for you. So you're checking the description. The description goes well. Is it put operation? Then you're checking the request body, right? Adding examples to the request body, making sure the examples make sense, adding descriptions. Okay. Then after that, you check for responses. It's exactly the same thing when you're documenting with README, right? It's just that you're doing it raw. There's no fine UI for you. You just have yourself and the Swagger. Just have your OpenAPI spec and the Swagger preview for you to see. So you're checking every description, making sure they are there, right? Once you're done with the description request for request body or for your parameters, then you move down to responses. Check for the responses, make sure they have descriptions as well. Then you move down to the tags, make sure the tags are set, everything, all the endpoints are under the appropriate tags. Because if you work on complex, OpenAPI specs, most times the tags might shift. What I mean shift is when you convert it, you'll find out that most of the endpoints are not under any tag at all. If you have subfolders, let's say you have a folder in your Postman collection, a folder, under that folder has another folder. If you convert to OpenAPI spec, you will not see the subfolder might not have anything under it, right? It can just be on its own. Then you have to start deleting and moving some stuff away. You get moving some tags away. Okay. So when you now convert back to README, that is where you can add your subfolders back if need be. But on OpenAPI spec, it will break. So those are the kind of things you're looking for. Just making sure that the OpenAPI spec file is neat. So most of the handwritten things we're trying to do here, in most cases, might not come up. You might get situations where you're not using Eno. You might get situations where you're working on a client. You might not even have time to use reusable components, right? But if it's something that's good to do, but if you don't do it, you're not faulted for it. Okay, it's just a plus. So don't get scared. It's not that difficult. Once you've converted and done everything properly on Postman, once you convert to OpenAPI spec, it's you have your, let's say, 70% done with your work. Okay, and once you convert, you're done. You don't really have much to do when you convert to README. Okay, so
No problem now, no problem. Thank God we're working on one, the plate. I will use plate to test it.
good,
And
good.
if I encounter any error, I will come to your DM personally.
Do it as soon as possible. If you can, after the call or tomorrow, try it out. The first, just even if you're not done with your plate assignment, just export it, right? Export it and put it on the converter I sent. Once you convert, just put it on Swagger and see how it looks. Then you can download from Swagger and put on README. Just look at it. Oh, this one makes sense. Then you take it out just to get a hand of how things work, right? It's not too difficult.
Okay, sir.
All right, you're welcome. Do we have any other questions? Mercy.
Please, this Swagger editor,
Mm.
please, how will I put it? The URL, I tried to use it sometimes, but I'm just confused how the whole thing was like.
Okay, you were breaking. I don't know if it's from my end. Please, could you come again?
I said, is it this Swagger editor? Is it a desktop application or is a web application
No,
for both?
it's a web
Because
application. I
I
use
tried
the
to
web.
use it.
I use the web. I tried the web. I don't know if it has a desktop application, but I use the web. And you know that Swagger, there's Swagger Hub and there's the Swagger Editor. The Swagger Editor is for your OpenAPI Spec file. So just so it can be clear. Okay.
So I think this class is interesting, and a lot of people are excited. That's why some of them left.
When I was done explaining, I had to come back and I'm like, I'm seeing how many we have like, where did they run to?
They are very much happy now. So let's just leave for now. So we are too excited. So we don't want to go over that limit. So let's just leave and come back and watch the video or something.
Mhm.
All right, so thank you, Prince, for the session. You did very well, and I know a lot of people here, they are so much happy with it. So, like you said, I think I will try to upload the video tomorrow, probably this night if I get it. Then you guys can come back and watch the video, take your time and learn. I think use one example, so you can use something simple. So, like Prince says, make sure you document everything very well on Postman, so you don't start going over a lot of stuff in that editor. That editor is not a friendly place. So try to make sure you document as most of it on Postman. I think he has showed you how to convert, how to export your collection, and how to convert. So if you do everything very well, I know most you have very few features that will not probably go there, and that is what you would have to manually have to do. But because you're doing that aspect manual, after that aspect, I don't think you have any other manual process. Everything is just automated. Hi, Joshua. Question.
Okay. When Prince started, or something he said that we have two stuff to convert that will cover the two. I don't know. It was that there are two different methods. One is the one that was created by you guys, and one is the other one. I said it will cover the two. So according to what I saw in the video, I said that you already covered one. I want to know if there will be any arrangement to cover the other one.
Okay. So both platforms do exactly the same thing. Right? When I said the tool we created, it is almost the same as the tool I showed you. Our tool is not 100% stable or usable for complex OpenAPI spec files. However, if you have a simple one you want to try out, you can use the tool, right? We just still need, or we're still working on some things, and we need your contributions. Okay, so that's where our tool is. So if you use our tool, you use the other one, it's the same thing. Our tool has the final UI though. So
All right, thank you.
you're welcome. I do. Why are you laughing? Not true. Now it's the truth. Spice, that's speaking to you. It's the truth. You can look at our tool. Our tool has a final UI.
So Gloria, you've been giving thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up since you're way ahead. Gloria, she's wondering what to say now.
Are you sure she's here? I don't think she's here anymore.
She's here. She's here. Yeah, I do.
Edu.
Yeah, you mentioned